2013 Washougal City Council meeting. I would ask that you all please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Rose, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Boger.
Here.
Councilmember Plinsky.
Here.
Councilmember Greenlee.
Here.
Councilmember Lindsay.
Here.
Councilmember McDaniel.
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Thank you. Are there any amendments to the agenda this evening? Okay, hearing none, we are going to go off script for just a few minutes. And I would ask Councilman Boger, would you meet me up in the front of the dais? We have a little quirk in swearing-ins this year. Councilman Boger is filling an unexpired term on the council. So as of the certification of the vote itself, we just swear him in for the remaining period of his term, even though it's 4 weeks. And then for those of you that may be here in a couple of weeks, we're going to swear him in again.
A lot of swearing going on. I just said that.
I, Brent Boger,
Do
do solemnly swear that I am a citizen of the United States and of the state of Washington,
solemnly swear that I am a citizen of the United States and of the state of Washington,
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and will, to the best of my judgment, skill, and ability,
and will, to the best of my judgment, skill, and ability,
truly, faithfully, diligently, and impartially
truly, faithfully, diligently, and impartially
perform the duties of the office of City of Washougal Council, position number 1,
perform the duties of the office of City of Washougal Council, position number 1,
in and for Clark County, Washington,
in and for Clark County, Washington,
as such duties are prescribed by law,
as such duties are prescribed by law.
so help me God.
So help me God. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You want to hang on to this one, Rose is going to do a duplicate copy, and then we'll get that one over to the audience. And since we're doing some swearing-ins, we're going to do a little bit of an odd one tonight.
Oh, look who's here.
Absolutely. This is our new canine officer, Ranger, and his handler, Officer Dave. Officer, come on in. Chief, come on up. I understand through this whole process, everybody keeps saying that Ranger is a hugger. So we're gonna do a little testing of Ranger tonight, and then we're gonna see how well he can do a couple of things. So, with that being said, Kyle, can you cause him to sit down? Okay, test number 1. Now, Ranger, we're gonna test your obedience, so I want you to stay down on all fours, and do not repeat after me. I, Canine Officer Ranger, do solemnly swear that I am a canine of the United States and of the state of Washington, that you will support the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington and the United States, and will, to the best of your judgment, skill, and ability, truly, faithfully, our obedience is not known so well, and impartially perform the duties of police canine officer in and for Washougal, Washington, as such duties are prescribed by law and my handler. Ranger, you don't agree to do that? We'll take that as a yes. This is gonna be the really fun and tricky part.
Sign it with his paw. Officer, were you speaking English to him? What?
He's actually trained in Dutch commands.
Yeah, I noticed that wasn't English.
Huh?
I noticed it wasn't English, so I wondered what it was.
Yes, he's got Dutch.
Dutch Command. So you have to learn to speak
So, yes.
Dutch.
We're gonna let you pick the paw.
All right, so let's see if we can do this. Lots.
I wish we could help you, Kyle.
There's no script for this, because we've actually never done this before.
Yeah, if you can slide that.
Goodness.
He's a Dutch shepherd, right? Ik spreek in Nederlands.
Interpretation there.
The good part is we don't need to send this one to the auditor. So we're gonna go ahead and Kyle, I'm gonna leave this here for you to hang on to.
All right.
But if the officers would stay up here for a few moments. Kyle,
Yes.
Chief, I understand from training, Kyle won't tell you this. He's kind of quiet, a little bit reserved. Throughout the training and the certifications with Ranger Ranger and Kyle came in number one on all the testing and certifications that they went through. You lost a total of 4.5 points overall. You want to talk to the folks about what all you went through in order to get him certified once we got him?
So Ranger is technically our fourth dog we've had. The first dual-purpose dog, so all our three other dogs were all strictly narcotics dogs. So he's the first one. He's a narcotics dog as well as a patrol dog. So they'll actually go out and catch bad folks. We do a 10-week class, and then at the end of that, we have to certify. We certify in narcotics and patrol. That's obedience and all this. So we do obedience and protection work and handler protection and bite work and a whole bunch of scenarios and cars and tracking and all this sorts of stuff. And he made me look very well. Like I said, we actually lost a total of 2 points in our narcotics work, and that's strictly because he likes to get to the source and scratch a little bit at it instead of just sitting right away, which isn't a bad thing, because it tells us that, hey, he really is trying to get to the source, which is what we want to know, what we're trying to do. And then we lost a total of 2 points because he was actually just crowding me a little bit when we did because we do off-leash obedience. We've got to walk and turn and down him and let him run and call him off and do all these different things. And so he was crowding, which I think is a good thing because it keeps him, his attention is focused to me. So I was okay with that. But we got 100% on several other areas and patrol. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work, a lot of time and effort, but definitely worth it. So this is our first full week on the road with him. So we'll see how it goes. So.
Now, that's not the same piece of radiator hose that you used with Dingo, is it?
It's a new one, but same. So for their patrol work or their detection work, this is the toy that they get. So to them, for us, they're finding drugs and different things that shouldn't be there, and for them, it's all about this hose. That's their reward. Their reward is the hose. They don't understand the impact that they're making and things like that. So it's a lot of work that they do for very little reward.
Ranger, we're gonna let you help us give out some, a couple of recognitions. Mark, would you go ahead and come forward?
Plus.
Oh, you're both there. As many of you know,
No-
we went
no problem.
through,
No, you're good.
You're fine.
We had a tremendous opportunity given to us by Dogpaw in raising the funds basically to replace Dingo. Basically raising $15,000 for us to enable us to purchase Ranger. So I have a proclamation this evening for Dog Paw. Whereas Dog Paw, the dog owners group for park access in Washington, exists to provide a fun and safe place for non-aggressive dogs to play, exercise, and socialize off-leash with other dogs. And whereas Dog Paw, a volunteer nonprofit entity that relies on donations and paid memberships. And whereas Dog Paw partners with parks, the Bonneville Power Administration, and others for land so that our community can have dog parks. And whereas Dog Paw volunteered to initiate a campaign to raise funds to replace retiring police canine officer Dingo. And whereas Dog Paw organized numerous fundraising events over a 2-month period, met regularly with Washougal city officials and sought contributions from Washougal, Vancouver, and Portland businesses. And whereas Dog Paw successfully met their goal of $15,000. And whereas Dog Paw planned Canine Officer Dingo's retirement party on October 19th, including canine handlers from the cities of Vancouver and Battleground and the Clark County Sheriff's Office, which was really cool. 9 dogs out there in one day. Whereas Dog Paw presented the Washougal Police Department with a check for $15,000 to purchase Canine Officer Dingo's replacement, introduced this evening as Canine Officer Ranger. Now therefore, I, Sean Gard, Mayor of the City of Washougal, on behalf of its citizens, do hereby express our sincere appreciation for Dog Paw's dedication and commitments to the Washougal Canine Program. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Can I say something real quick, or
Absolutely, because we're not done yet.
then you want me to wait?
No, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that, this was a big honor for Dog Paw to do this, and it was a pleasure to actually raise money to replace a dog, that's still alive and gets to retire and enjoy his life and not be killed in the line of duty. So we were thrilled to do this. And I wanted to say that without the vision and dream of Mark Watson here, who sold it to us at the organization, about raising $15,000 in like 2 months to replace this dog, and then basically ran his own one-man team to get all of the fundraising done and approach all of the businesses and spearhead this whole thing. I want to say we could not have done it without Mark. He's just a one-man army, and so I want to say thanks to Mark.
We also have a photograph of Ranger and a little note of appreciation from Ranger for helping raise those funds as well.
Oh,
Right? Mark, anything from you?
not being much on words, which is hard to believe, I know, but this has been a real honor, getting to know everybody in the city of Washougal, and I'll tell you from the heart, you couldn't ask for a bunch of better officers than what you have here in the city of Washougal. They are a wonderful, bunch of men doing what they have to do, and, I don't think there's anybody finer. We work a lot with the Sheriff's Department in Clark County, and they don't hold a candle to Chief Mitchell and Kyle and his dogs. So thank you very much so. It was a real honor to work with them.
Cool stuff. Chief? I didn't tell you about this, Mark.
No, I don't know what else can be said. I just want to thank Dog Paw and the donors that made this possible. Without their work, we wouldn't be here today doing this. And to Kyle, I know that, I went out there to visit one day while they're doing training, and it was cold, and I know they're out there all day, and I watched Ranger work for about 30 minutes, and I was ready to go in. And also, you know, to allow Kyle to go, you know, there was an absence inside the department, so the officers had to pick it up and step it up and work. So it was really a joint effort by everybody to make this happen, and I just would like to thank everyone for helping make this happen for us. So.
Well, and speaking of donors, Mrs. Martin, would you join us up here? We've got a couple of guests here tonight that really kicked things off and got things going. Kathy Markham is a resident here in Washougal, and when we first announced the fund drive to try and raise the $15,000, Kathy generously stepped up and donated $5,000 to the cause to get things moving. So we were a third of the way there just with that first donation. And then, do I understand that you made an additional donation? Continual. The number I heard was about a $2,000 number to, is it that much? Way more? Kathy has basically made donations to have a specially designed and fitted Kevlar vest for Ranger as well, bulletproof vest, so we certainly appreciate that. Kathy, I've got a photograph of Ranger as well, and just so you know, the day we did this, we kind of got, okay, I got screwed up on dates, so we're gonna redo some photographs as well and wash up the patrol car before. Hang on to these, and the other pictures are gonna be very appropriate for being inside here. You're very welcome, don't go anywhere. Jerry and Susie Lance,
Yes.
would you come forward? And Susie, you cannot pet the dog. Well, you can. You might get that cast back. That same evening that we accepted the check from Mrs. Markham, the Lanzas also came forward from Camas and donated an additional $2,500 for us towards the purchase of Ranger. So literally within that first meeting, we were 50% on the way to the goal. And Jerry and Susie, on behalf of the department and the city, I'd like to present you with that picture of Ranger as well.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm a policeman's dog, and that's one of the reasons these programs are so important in my life.
Ranger, I can't tell any other employee this, but you're one handsome boy. You like that? Well, thank you all very much.
Appreciate it very much.
Appreciate it again. Thank you very much. Well, thank you for indulging us for a few minutes. It's not often we get to do really fun things like that. At this point, we are at the point in the agenda, the first point in the agenda for any members of the public that would like to address council. I know we do have a public meeting or a public hearing that is further on the agenda under new business in regards to the budget, but are there any members of the public that would like to address council on any other item? Okay, not your only opportunity. We will have another one farther in the agenda. Moving to our consent agenda. This evening, we have a consent agenda consisting of 5 items. Your workshop minutes of November 18th, 2013. Your regular council minutes of November 18th. Our regular accounts payable claims in the amount of $748,854.09. Payroll vouchers totaling $536,152.83, and payroll vouchers totaling $172,833.92.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Hearing no objection, so ordered. That takes us on to new business. A couple of discussion items. Item number 1 under administration, the Camas-Washougal Economic Development Association Professional Services Agreement and Interlocal Agreement. David.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. No action requested of you this evening, but because we had the joint work session, we lost our work session time. So we do have a couple of items that we'll do in a workshop format. The first is it's regarding our Camas-Washougal Economic Development Association and the professional services agreement that we have with them, as well as the interlocal agreement that we have with the City of Camas and the Port of Camas-Washougal. As you know, we entered into an interlocal agreement with our partners in economic development, the City of Camas and the Port of Camas-Washougal, a couple of years ago to kick off the QUITA, as we call it. That interlocal agreement expires at the end of this year, and so for us to continue in our partnership, all 3 of us as partners will be taking up an interlocal agreement, an extension of the interlocal agreement. So in your packet is a draft interlocal agreement, and it follows right after the professional services agreement, but I wanted to review the interlocal first. The interlocal is proposed to have a term in perpetuity. So instead of a 2-year term or a 3-year term or a specific finite term, the term of the interlocal agreement would be in perpetuity unless otherwise terminated. And there is termination language that's in our current interlocal agreement, and that termination language is proposed to be brought forward in the proposed interlocal agreement, and that is that in any year, any party to the agreement can notify the other parties of an intent to terminate. That needs to be done by September 1st of a given year, and then that termination would take effect at the end of the year. It gives the other partners and the organization an opportunity to plan for the implications of one party terminating. So the thought among the partners in bringing this forward in this way is that we agree to the partnership in perpetuity, knowing that anyone can terminate subject to that provision. The financial provisions of the interlocal agreement remain the same. The collective investment of all three parties is $200,000, 50% borne by the port, and then the other 25% portions borne by the cities of Camas and Washougal, so that's $50,000, and that's the same amount as we've always had. Then a companion document to the interlocal agreement, the professional services agreement, is each of the partners also has a PSA with the CWEDA, and this is the mechanism by which we formally obtain the services of the not-for-profit organization and the mechanism by which we can remit payment to them for those services. The last professional services agreements have been annual agreements. The draft that's in your packet also proposes an agreement in perpetuity, subject to the provisions of the interlocal agreement and the termination clause that it contains, and it defers to the interlocal agreement on the amount of the funding. The professional services agreement prescribes the payment schedule and some of the other details. The reporting provisions are the same as we've always had, an annual report, and the content of that report is described. Other than that, these documents essentially, if approved, will continue our current relationship and partnership with the Port of Camas, Washougal, and with the City of Camas. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. As you know, the budget has proposed $50,000 or $55,000 in the economic development line item, $50,000 for this partnership. We're joined this evening by Paul Dennis from CWEDA and Commissioner Lampton from the Port, and Dave Ripp, the Executive Director at the Port. And I believe they have some things to share with you briefly. But if you had any questions for me on the documents, I'd be happy to answer those.
Let's go, Paul or Dave or Mark.
Good evening. Again, I'm David Ripp. I'm the Executive Director for the Port of Camas, Washougal. I just want to talk a little bit about what we've been up to. I've met with you guys individually and kind of get up to speed of what's going on, but I just want to kind of reiterate what we've done over the last 13 months at the Port. We've out in Steigerwalder Industrial Park, you're aware that we just brought in about $2.25 million in infrastructure out. We spent in investing in our development out there. That's just phase one, which opened up roughly between 30 and 40 acres. At the same time we were completing that, we had a request through a current business out in the industrial park to build them a 22,000 square foot building, which is Foods and Season. That project alone is right around $2.5 million. And then, as you're aware, our waterfront development and development agreement that we brought forth here a while back, just the purchase alone in that property, the Port invested $6.1 million in that property, and we're currently working on the trail investment, which roughly is going to be about $2.5 million, which will build the trail along the waterfront, including the park that I've showed you guys that we're looking at on the river. Just from those investments alone, you're looking at $3.5 million from our projects going just towards sales tax. Now, I'm not sure financially how much of that goes to state and is then divvied back to the city, but then also excise sales tax from the purchase of the property. One of the things that we're currently working on with a local gentleman, an economist, we're looking at doing an economic study of what the port contributes, and I haven't gotten any final numbers yet, but one of the things that kind of he had shared with us is the average annual income just in the port alone is $57,800 a year. That's annual income of employees that work for businesses out in the Port Industrial Park. And he said, the gentleman was telling me that it's 23% higher than Clark County, and that was a 2011 number. So that's pretty impressive with what, what's going on, the businesses out there, what they pay their employees, but also what we're trying to do and expand out in Steigerwald Commerce Center as well. So just some numbers I wanted to share with you folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Dave, excuse me, may I ask you a question? How many jobs, local jobs, do you think is related to the port that you bring in? Do you have any idea of that number?
Well, the port originally moved and developed that industrial park. They sold and leased property from the beginning after the levee was constructed. So right now, I think the numbers, last numbers I saw were the high 800 and some jobs right in the main park. Mm-hmm. And then in Steigerwald, we're just starting. But, our goal, the county goal is seven jobs per acre. But, I mean, realistically, you're looking at trying to get 4 to 5 jobs per acre. So 2.4 acres for foods and season, and you're looking at, right now, they have 30. And from this growth, they're going to grow between 35 and 40. So that's a pretty good range there.
Are most of those local people? Or do they, do you know?
I think it comes from Camas and Washougal, and then there's people that live out,
yeah,
I call the Washougal Alps, so out east. So I think they are. I don't know those numbers. I can find out because Scott Bailey, thank you, has a lot of those numbers, and I'm connected with him, so I can actually find that out and get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks.
You had some questions last time I was here about some of the companies that we've worked on, and I wanted to take this time to kind of remind some of the efforts that we've been involved with. Our efforts are not just retaining and helping existing business expand, but also bringing in new business. Some of those businesses that we've worked with in the past is Fastenal, which located out at the port. We worked with Sapphire, the folks at the Sapphire plant, to try to get that up and running, and market conditions have made that stagnate, but we've tried to bring in other tenants and have spent quite a few hours bringing in outside resources to help them market those buildings. We've also worked with other local companies out at the port, like Festus, who wanted to do some job training, so we've partnered up with CRDC and Southwest Washington Workforce Development Council to help them get grants so they can help train some of their workers. We've worked with Foods and Seasons quite a bit on helping them with some of their decisions around locating and remaining out at the port. We've worked with Dave on a number of the grant applications for the investments, and I want to say over the last year the port's invested in Washougal alone about $9 to $10 million? $9.5 million. And those transactions include not only infrastructure investments, but also purchasing property, which generates dollars back to the city. And I think our rough estimate was somewhere around $90,000 just in REIT and sales tax dollars that have been generated directly back to the city of Washougal. Another important note is a lot of our planning to date really has been setting up the future for Washougal. It's just as of this last February where Steigerwald has come online to offer its initial 30 to 40 acres. We're also engaged with the port and Killian on marketing the waterfront. One of the things that our organization has been asked to do is help provide some scope and direction on how to market that property. There's another couple $1 million that's going to be invested this next year in cleanup and trail construction. Is that right?
$2.5 million in trail and about $1 million in cleanup.
So within about 18 months, there'll probably be somewhere around $14 million that's been directly invested by the port in connection with CWEDA, helping them market those properties. We've also produced, we'll have our digital magazine ready by next week. The videos are finalized. Those are on their way. They're being FedExed to us as we speak. I think we brought the port video. I'm going to let Mark talk about some of the marketing things that we're doing and some of the partnership, the overall partnership. And our hope is that Washougal will stay with the city of Camas and the port in this endeavor that we've undertaken over the last 2 years. Mark? Want to do the video first? Okay.
Port of Camas Washougal has a 475-acre industrial park. It's located at the west end of the Columbia River National Scenic Wildlife Area. The Port Industrial Park is home to over 50 companies.
Hi, I'm Steve Carroll. I'm the owner of Water Care Industrial Services.
This is Foods in Season. We're a family business here in the Port of Camas Washougal.
We provide water treatment chemicals for industrial customers.
We're a company that distributes gourmet products nationwide. We also do some export to Europe and the Asian countries. What we like about the Port of Camas Washougal is the close proximity to the international airport, access to the interstate highways.
The Port Industrial Park is served by rail, and we're within 30 minutes of 2 international ports. But we all appreciate the quality of place.
You'll be hard-pressed to find anything as pretty as it is here in the Northwest.
We offer a great marina, wonderful waterfront parks, and a small aircraft airport just to the north of here.
The business opportunities are very good.
The ability to expand our business, the port has been a wonderful partner in the growth of our company.
Foods in Season!
We wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
We've just added 120 acres out here, zone heavy industrial and pad ready. We'd like to say that we're on the edge of somewhere and nowhere, but we're very much a part of the metropolitan revolution.
Whether you want to lease, buy, or build to suit, the Port of Camas Washougal has an opportunity for every business. The Port of Camas Washougal can help finance your project through industrial revenue bonds, offer state and local tax incentives, as well as federal new market tax credits. We will do everything we can to help you. Imagine yourself here. Let's talk.
That's not an ad for Washougal. So I think what you get from that message is that you know, when I talk about the metropolitan revolution, that's really, that's the title of a book from the Brookings Institute. And in that book, they talk about economic city-states. And if you look at where we are today, that's what's around us. It's the greater Portland, Vancouver, excuse me, MSA. And within that, you know, you really look at spheres of influence. There's us, there's Portland, there's Vancouver, there's the Port of Vancouver, there's North County, but all of those things are connected, all right? We're all part of a greater whole. And the Port is really looking for a long-term commitment from you. We've invested heavily, you've heard about that. I think it's going to be around $17 million over a 3-year period of time that we'll invest in this community. So what we're looking for is a support from you that's ongoing. All right, this, you know, economic development is really, it's a long-term commitment. It isn't about how many jobs you get from me today. It's where you're taking me tomorrow. And I think the jobs, have come and they will continue to come. But again, we have to work on this together, and we have to look forward to a continuing partnership. So anyhow, I thank you for your time, and I look forward to your continuing support. Thank you. Any questions?
Thanks, Mark. Council questions on the professional services agreement and the interlocal agreement coming forward. David, you'll be bringing those forward next week for approval?
They would be on the agenda next week.
Joyce?
Well, I have a question that had happened last year. We okayed the agreement, but we didn't have the figures about what had happened till afterwards. You and I had talked about this briefly, David. Is there any way we can do that so that we have performance figures before we okay the budget? Can we change the scenario of that a bit?
That's a possibility. We would have to change the reporting window. We currently use a calendar year for reporting, and so as is typical with most organizations, that data is available in the quarter following the last quarter of your reporting period. And that happens to be the quarter after you approve your budget.
I realize.
So it's out of sync in that regard. We would have to work with the organization to look at sort of a different fiscal year for reporting, a quarter 4 and quarter 1, 2, and 3. So I don't know if that's what we should do. That'd be the only way I could see to change that dynamic.
Is your question in regards to potentially, if we don't see results, not investing into?
Well, no, but last year we okayed, when we voted on the budget, we okayed the amount of money in the budget, but we still hadn't had a report from QUEDA
Right.
to pull that together, and I thought that was backwards. We were okaying something before we saw, before we had the final presentation. So I just felt that could be switched. Now, maybe I'm the only one on the council that felt that, but I was not quite comfortable with that.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's a terrible thing to do that. Even though you've put it in the budget, doesn't mean that you've necessarily expended the money yet. There are a lot of things that we budget. We're going to be asking you this evening potentially to adopt a budget, that there are things that we won't
I understand
pay for
that.
until December of next year.
I understand
so.
that.
Mr. Mayor, isn't the key date the September?
Well, and that's why I brought
yeah.
up the question, in that even that wouldn't, if that was the purpose for it, you would have to back it up even farther to September for the opt-out for the subsequent year, so. Paul? I was just going to say also, in a previous life, I spent a lot of time looking at economic statistics from Department of Commerce, Bureau of Labor Statistics, and all of those people that provide those mind-numbing data pamphlets called gross domestic product and all of that kind of stuff. The numbers for 2012 were reported at the first numbers were reported at the end of the first quarter of 2013. I'm not aware of any year in which the first reported numbers were not significantly amended. So typically, if you want good data on things like inflation or average wages or things like that from the U.S. government, if you want numbers at the end of 2013, you're going to be looking at end of 2012 numbers. So you're going to be a full year out of sync. On the other hand, if you wait until April, then you will have at least the preliminary numbers from the various government reporting sources on the kind of economic numbers that we care about. And the other problem is that the Portland, Vancouver metropolitan statistical area is about the 24th largest in the country, which means that there are very few numbers that are reported quarterly, a slightly larger number that are reported semi-annually, but the real report is only annual. If, on the other hand, we were looking at Los Angeles, they have monthly reports. So the data reporting is, and the lags involved in that are in fact a significant problem. That's all.
Other council discussion on the PSA or the interlocal? Dave?
I understand your concern. I share it. But I don't think it makes a lot of difference because the data that are used are submitted by QITA. They go into an evaluation model that was developed by an outfit in Vancouver that, as far as I know, does pretty good development of evaluation models. But we're asking here the fox to guard the hen house. And I brought this up before we ever launched this enterprise. I was told that we had to get it done in a hurry. I heard a lot of that from Obama. And I'm not buying it. But at any rate, what we've got now is we've got an agreement that does not have an adequate evaluation system for the contract. So there's $200,000 of local money going every year into a contract, and we don't know what the results from that contract are because we don't have good data. My solution to that is to use available county, state, and federal data, the type of thing that Paul was talking about. And I've been after some sort of a change to the evaluation system since before we let this contract. And I think the port was remiss in letting this contract without an evaluation system. It was developed after the fact. It was developed by QITA's board, hardly an unbiased source, and it uses inputs from QITA. Again, hardly an unbiased source. So I am not willing to vote to renew this thing until we get a decent evaluation system in place for the contract. It's a basic requirement for any contract in government contracting. You develop the evaluation criteria before you let the contract. And Mr. Lampton has pointed out that he's asking for our support on a more or less permanent basis. I see that in Section 3, which makes this a permanent agreement, and Mr. Scott addressed that. I also see it in Section 5, the financial section, which, and correct me if I'm wrong, opens up the possibility of unlimited expenses by QITA. Well, let's take a look at Section 5 in a workshop and see exactly what that means. But I cannot support the continued use of these resources at a time when Washougal has needs that are not being met. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor?
Brett?
If I could ask whoever can answer this question. The data we would need to evaluate the contract would be out after the first quarter of next year. Is that?
Some.
Let me talk about this because I think there's a huge misnomer on what data we collect and what data is quote-unquote QITA data. None of the data that comes from us is QITA data. The company that we hired last year, Edie Hovey and Company, utilizes national and state data to try to analyze what is the spin-off effects of our economic development endeavors here locally. So they're using national, state, and other local data that's not generated by us, but it's generated by other agencies that have been long time tested for decades. The information that is more localized for Camas Washougal comes from self-reporting by the companies that we help. So that information is provided by, say, Foods and Seasons. How do we know that they're going to add 30 to 35 employees? Foods and Seasons has reported that to us. How do we know that their building is going to cost $2.5 million? The port has gone out to bid, constructing a $2.5 million building. How do we know that the waterfront property costs $6.1 million? The port wrote a check for $6.1 million. So no data is coming from Quita. This is all outside information that gets reported to the individual, the company that we hired to do the economic impact assessment. Paul's correct. Most data lags. If we're lucky, it lags a quarter. Most reliable data is revised over time, and you have to look back a year. That's why when I was here in November, I could only report 2012 data because we are such a small area, even within the metro area, that we cannot get monthly, weekly, or quarterly data. It's on an annualized basis, and it lags by a year.
Well, that was very helpful information, but wasn't exactly my question. My question would be, as far as timing goes, because to me the key date here is not the budget cycle. It's now going to be, our September 1st notice date for the following year. Is that correct, under this new agreement?
That's been the termination clause in the existing agreement as well. That is a key date, certainly. If there is a consideration of termination, we need to notify the other partners by September 1st. Otherwise, we cannot terminate unless the interlocal is expiring otherwise, which it is at the end of this year.
Right, and so we basically have this termination date, and we have to provide the other parties 4 months' notice of termination, and making it, rather than having to go through and annually renew it every year. It seems to me that, it's just the budget is not really that key of a time to evaluate this, because if we determine not to renew it, we'll just have to budget for it at that point.
You still get to opt out every
That's
September.
That's the point, yeah.
And so does the port, and so does the city of Camas. And that's the way it was set up initially.
Right, and the interlocal agreement specifies the 4 benchmarks that will be reported on, and so those are in your packet. Those are the same benchmarks that have been required for the reporting. I think the last report went into some other areas as well that aren't specifically prescribed in the agreement. We've talked about a February report, but it will be based on the data that is available at the time, and we do the best we can with that. We could look at a end of second quarter report as well, and perhaps that would.
Well, what would we have by about August 1st, if we want to? I think that's the key date, the opt-out date.
You should know 2013 pretty well.
You will more than know 2013. You'll know a good portion, 6 months of 2014.
That sounds fine to me.
The interlocal agreement doesn't specify when precisely. We've just fallen into practice that we've done a quarter 1 report for the previous year. And that's just kind of a practice that there is. We could certainly do a end of quarter 2 report like that.
Well, the other thing I'd say is that it is certainly possible on even a quarterly basis to report activity, given that a whole lot of what is being done is basically a trade secret. That once Foods and Season or Fastenal say publicly they're going to locate here, that information is public. But up until then, it's very closely held. And the worst thing that we could do is get a reputation for being blabbermouths on what is basically private information for these companies. So it's easy enough to report activity as long as we can create a bit of a smokescreen as to exactly who it is that we're talking about.
Dave? That's the last thing I want to do. I don't want to burden Quita with reporting on activities for 2 reasons. One, it keeps them from doing their job, which is to bring in business. That's what I want to evaluate. And the second one is that, and I lost my train of thought. I'll come up with it in a minute.
you know, we're spending a lot of time talking about data, and we're open to how we can report that. Paul's right with some of the companies. Camas ran into this with Biotech One, which eventually it became out there that was Alphatech, where they didn't want to do any announcement. But because they had taken out a building permit, that became public record, which meant the newspapers knew at that point who they were. And so to get ahead of what was being reported, they started self-reporting. But there are some companies that don't want to report that. If you look at Millworks, Brewpub, which is one that we tried to find a suitable location here, and we couldn't find a suitable location at the time in Washougal. We only reported last year, I believe, about 12 jobs associated with that. We do follow up with these companies to figure out, are they growing? Did they meet those targets or not? And they've self-reported that they're around 30, 35 employees as of today. And we've actually been talking to them about some of their future plans that include both Camas and Washougal. So, you know, if you come up with a better way for us to report, you know, we want to make sure the data that we report to you is very useful and is measurable according to the activities we're doing. But there, you know, one of the things that we do is retain. That's why we try to break up the numbers between retain, expand, and bring in new, but we also have all the planning efforts that we engage in, which don't generate jobs today, but do generate jobs for tomorrow.
Dave?
Now I remember, thank you for sparking my memory.
No problem.
I don't want to report on activities. As I mentioned, it ties up your time.
Right.
The other thing is that it's reporting on inputs. I don't care about inputs. You can have all the inputs in the world. What I'm interested in is outputs, outcomes. I'm interested in companies, jobs, and dollars brought into Washougal. That's what I want to measure. And you're the expert on econometrics.
Right.
That's one of the reasons that you were hired. You had that background. Please help us come up with an evaluation system that measures that.
And we want to work with you to make sure that happens. Honestly, we do.
Okay?
If memory serves, that's what you brought to us in January of last year.
It is, but you know, with any report that we provide, if there's some other metrics or some other way of reporting the information that becomes more useful, we're open to that. I agree with Dave. I mean, it's basically myself, and we've brought in Renee for part-time help. I don't want to tie up all of our time reporting on activities, and I see this in other organizations, and they just become paralyzed at some point because they have to report to all these different agencies on different activities. I want us to really be able to roll up our sleeves and get the work done. I think that's what you expect. I think that's what the port expects. I think that's what City of Camas expects as well. But if there's a better way for us to report what we're doing, the outcomes of what's happening, we're open to that.
Other questions, other comments? Jennifer?
So essentially, this agreement is, well, particularly Section 2 regarding the duration, changes it to a perpetual agreement unless otherwise terminated, rather than bringing it forward every single year, correct?
Correct.
So would it be possible to have some sort of a reminder brought forward in, say, August for the council to reevaluate?
Yes.
Great.
I think what we'll probably look at doing in talking with Paul is potentially set it up for that. We'll do a recap in January for 2013, but potentially in August, do another one for better numbers for 2013, what he's seen so far, and we'll tee it up at that point for council to have that discussion ahead of that September date. That makes for an easy reminder for everybody.
Yes. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Paul. Councilman Shoemaker, in regards to item 5 under financial, I see where you're coming to in trying to make this a perpetual or something that doesn't need to continually come back just to be renewed each year. We did have exact numbers in there. The port's contribution not to exceed 100,000, the two cities' contributions each not to exceed 50,000, and put it in there for 50%, 25%, 25%. It does call out based on the initial combined amount of 200,000, so it puts it at $1 certain We've not really had any substantial conversations of any type in regards to increases in those amounts. But from my standpoint, my belief is that we, the city, will not write checks that exceed any more than $50,000 for 2013 and 2014.
What was that percentage that concerned me?
The 25%, so it gets to there. Now, I'm not gonna go so far out on a limb to say that at some point our contribution doesn't become 55,000 or somewhere in there, but it's a number that would come to you in budget preparation, and you would know that number ahead of time and broken out separately, just as we have in this year's budget, separately from CREDC, so you saw where the dollars were going. And we certainly do not intend, nor do we really have the ability to expend any more than that without council's approval.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the professional services agreement or the interlocal agreement? Okay. Moving on to the police department, master interlocal government agreement for the RegGen Records Management Systems project. Chief Mitchell.
All right, there we are. I'm going to take just a few minutes to go over this so you kind of know what this agreement is all about. It'll be before you to hopefully approve that next week. So, and if I expect you to approve it, I guess I should tell you a little bit about it. So, okay. So what is RegGen? RegGen is basically, it's a law enforcement records management system. It was acquired by the City of Portland Police Department. And it's designed to be a multi-agency, multi-jurisdictional law enforcement records management system. The primary objective of RegGen is to develop a common database in the records management system for all of the local law enforcement agencies to use. And the benefit of that is it allows us to communicate a little bit more effectively, to prevent criminal activity, and to improve and help solve criminal activity just through a shared record management system. Right now, we're using different systems, and I'll kind of get into that quickly. The intent of this IGA is basically Portland needs to get a head count on how many agencies are going to participate in this program. And in order to do that, they just ask that we, and all the other agencies that are looking at this, sign this by saying, yes, we're interested, we want to move forward with this, and then they can kind of help develop a cost. Later in the year, next year, there will be a participatory agreement that will come out, and then, which we'll bring to council for approval at that time. There is a bailout clause on this IGA, so if you want to get out of it before we actually join the participatory IGA, we can do that as well. These are some of the agencies that are looking at RegGen. You can see all the law enforcement agencies in Clark County. These are some of the Portland agencies that are looking at. There's 24 in general, so it would create quite a big database of material for us to look at. So what are we using right now? RegGen will replace our system, which is called EPR. It's Electronic Police Reports. It's used by all of the agencies with the exception of Battleground and La Center and Ridgefield, which are on a different reporting mechanism. They're the only 3 agencies that use something different in the Clark County area. They're still interested in looking at RegGen. However, they have a system to fall back on if they do not decide to participate. EPR is provided to us by the Sheriff's Department at no cost. However, the software is old, it's failing, and when EPR will no longer be supported once RegGen goes online, and all of us that are on EPR are going to have to come up with some type of system for our records management piece. So what are our costs to participate in region? The sheriff, Lucas, really wants all of us to be on this system, and he's committed to paying the first 2 years of that. So for our first 2 years, no cost. After that, if we were to join it today, the estimated costs are on a per officer basis, which means it's fair across the board for large agencies and small agencies. So for us, at $60 per officer per month, we're looking at just under $14,000 per year. There is a penalty if we want to take a wait-and-see attitude on this, how it turns out, and try and do something different. You're basically penalized with double fees for the first year. So that $14,000 would turn into a little over $27,000. So our recommendation is that next week, and this goes before you, that you grant us approval to move forward with that agreement by signing the agreement. And then there'll be a follow-up with council in spring or summer of next year, in 2014, when a participatory IGA comes out, and then would be formal partners into that agreement. And hopefully, by the end of 2014, we will go live on the region system. So I went through that very quickly. Any questions? This was presented to the Public Safety Committee a couple weeks ago. So in the long run, we're using a records management system that is going to need to be replaced soon. We have a chance to join on this system 2 years at no cost, and we can basically test drive this for 2 years, and if there's something that's not working for us and we want to move elsewhere, we can do that.
Questions from council? Dave?
Public Safety Committee did review this, this issue, and we're in support of it. And the reasons are very simple. We don't have a lot of options, and very few of the options that we do have are good ones. And the other thing is, it's not going to cost us a lot to test drive this thing. So why not? It was a fairly easy decision.
Sometimes we get those. Paul?
I just had a question. It's more curiosity. A little background. About 1970, the Rand Corporation did a study for the New York City Fire Department that by analyzing a lot of data, they ended up with a fairly good predictive model on where fires would happen. But even more importantly, if you got an alarm from a particular location in the city at 2 a.m., you knew that that was a warehouse district and you pushed it to 3 alarms immediately. On the other hand, if it was at 7 o'clock in the evening on Park Avenue, then it was almost certainly a kitchen fire and you would respond differently. Is there any hope that this kind of data can lead to those kinds of how should I say, smarter allocations of resources?
I think that would be one of the intents of this type of a system. You and I, we all know that these people cross the river, they go back and forth, and right now we're unable to really take a peek into Portland's records and see if some of these same players are moving back and forth. We know they are. On EPR, I can check with Vancouver and county and kind of just see, oh, okay, they've been operating over here as well. So it does allow us the ability to get a much bigger picture of what's going on, where these people are working, and I'm sure this will tie much more into it, such as pawn shop data, things like that. So right now we're looking at a small field of view, and it's good, but this will be much bigger. And with all of the law enforcement agencies being able to communicate through the system, it's just going to increase our success rate that much better.
Thank you.
Paul, some of the questions you asked, certainly are daily put into practice already. We certainly have tracking systems that tell us when our calls go out, but even more so, we've got human intelligence through the officers that know certain individuals, certain addresses, certain calls to certain places, they add, subtract, mix, and go from there. Where this, Chief hit it dead on, where this really is potentially the biggest tool that any of the law enforcement agencies have that are participating in this, is our officers now will know better who they're dealing with, if there's information to know. So many years ago, everything was done through dispatch, and dispatch only had certain amounts of information available to them, or you got a call from somebody else. With the age of computers in the vehicles, the amount of data that flows back through there just from a driver's license check is amazing. So now being able to tap into all of those other jurisdictions, computer banks that potentially deal with the same individuals as well, just for officer safety and, as you say, additional call-outs, it should be a tremendous tool. Other questions for the chief? Okay, you have this back before us next week?
I will.
Thanks. Okay, moving to some action items. Agenda Bill 71-13, an emergency ordinance for a moratorium regarding I-502 recreational marijuana. Good evening, Mitch.
Good evening. As the mayor mentioned, the agenda bill before you this evening is for an ordinance adoption for a moratorium related to Initiative 502 or recreational marijuana. What we'll talk briefly about is federal state law, get into a little bit of location criteria as well, talk about the proposed ordinance, and then recommended action. So you've seen it before, but marijuana is classified as a Schedule I drug within the Controlled Substance Act, and the possession, growing, distributing, knowingly facilitating the above, all of those things are a violation of federal law, regardless of individual state statutes permitting such use. In 2012, the Washington State voters approved Initiative 502, which made it legal and authorized the possession and use of marijuana-related paraphernalia in these amounts: 1 ounce of usable marijuana, 16 ounces of marijuana infused in solid form, and 72 ounces of marijuana infused product in liquid form. Violations, individuals are still subject to criminal prosecution if you're above those amounts and if you're under the age of 21. And again, all of that is still in violation of federal law. The initiative, state law, it did task the Liquor Control Board with developing regulations, which is in state law now. It's WAC 314-55. It was effective November 21st of this year. It makes provisions for 3 licenses. You have production, which there will be no limit on the number that the state can issue there. Processing, again, no limit on those. And then sales. And we have one in the city of Washougal, 1 license for us, as well as Camas, and Vancouver has 6, Clark County has 6 at large, and then Battleground. We talked a little bit about location criteria, and I've updated a little bit since our work session in November. I put some of these things back in there, but the location criteria, if you're within 1,000 feet, and I'm sorry I clicked through all these, but of a school, playground, recreational center, facility, child care center, public park, public transit, library, or any game arcade. And again, it's the shortest distance in a straight line from perimeter to perimeter. And I put these...
Mitch?
Yes?
Let's back you up one. And confirm to me again that public park is actually municipal park.
I'll get there.
Okay.
Now I gotta go through, sorry. I'm almost there. Perimeter means property line that encloses an area, so it's perimeter to perimeter, property line to property line. Playground means a public outdoor recreation for children, usually equipped with swings, slides, and other playground equipment owned and/or managed by a city, county, state, or federal government. Public park means an area of land for the enjoyment of the public, having facilities for rest and/or recreation, such as a baseball diamond or basketball court, owned and/or managed by a city, county, state, federal government, or metropolitan park district. And public park does not include trails. That is the definition of state law. So this was the map that I showed to you last time, and what we did is I broke it down into regions in east, west, and then the port to get at some of the questions that you had. So this map, the gray is the actual perimeter around parks and whatnot, and I was mistaken last time, Your Honor, when I talked about the Washougal Crossing. That is actually right here. This is 3rd Avenue, so it's the properties that are just to the east of that area that are within that, they're zoned highway commercial, and so they are outside of that 1,000 feet, so that's where there was nothing in place where a retail operation could set up shop. Looking at the east side, we have the dog park location, the Buy Mart, and then the Safeway. So this, again, that's the area that is at Town Center Town Center East Village, and then along East Street is the community commercial. Looking in the industrial park, the green are the available properties. Again, the gray is the buffered area. So those are the available properties that would you could use a production or processing facility. And Councilor Greenlee asked about private and port ownership. So the red is privately owned property, and then the green is port-owned property. So the proposed ordinance in front of you is for the adoption of a 6-month moratorium for all Initiative 502 related uses. It recognizes the public approval of Initiative 502, but it also recognizes the contradiction between federal and state law. And it is an emergency ordinance, so it will become effective immediately, and it'll set a public hearing for January 27th, 2014 on the ordinance itself. So the recommended action, if council desires to make a motion to read the ordinance by title only and pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Thank you, Mitch. Council?
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we read the ordinance by title only.
Hearing no objection, so ordered. Before the ordinance by title only, I just want to remind council that as an emergency ordinance, this would take 5 votes of council to approve, instead of the usual 4 for a non-emergency. An ordinance declaring an emergency and adopting a 6-month moratorium within the city of Washougal on the establishment, location, operation, licensing, or maintenance of recreational marijuana producers, processors, or retail establishments asserted to be authorized or actually authorized under Initiative 502, Washington Administrative Code, Chapter 314-55, Revised Code of Washington, Chapter 69.50, or any other laws of the State of Washington, setting a date for a public hearing on the moratorium and providing that the moratorium will take effect immediately upon passage.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Second. I've got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner. Council discussion. Joyce?
I'd like to know, how many moratoriums can we do? How long can we stop this? I mean,
Well,
because
this
once
is
the
the-
license is issued, is that?
Yeah, this is the first ordinance that you're putting in place for recreational marijuana.
Moratorium.
Moratorium ordinance. State law says that you can do 6 months. You can extend that for a year if you develop a work plan, and then it says after that, you can do additional 6 months. As long as you have a new ordinance and have a new hearing, you can keep doing that. Now, that's not the recommended action. I mean, we would want to try to put something in place, and I think that this is something that we can put something in place, but I think it also gives us the time to see what happens other places.
Other questions, comments?
Well, excuse me, as I understand, the licenses will be issued the first of the year?
I don't know. I haven't heard a definite time period on when those licenses will be issued. The 30-day window is open right now, the 30-day for that. We actually had one that the Liquor Control Board issues weekly the number of licenses that were done. We've had one that has applied so far within the city.
Oh, that's interesting. Where does one look that up?
I can forward you the same email that I got from Liquor Control Board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
What do you expect to bring back on the 27th? That's just the public hearing on this ordinance?
Yes, that is the public hearing, the required public hearing within 60 days of this,
And then the moratorium would end
6 months from today.
today,
Yeah.
so June, early June, or late May. Okay. I'll go along this time.
Yeah, my hope is that, we'll definitely have something in place that that we can live with.
Well, on that point, some cities are refusing to allow it, like Kent. Kent is the big city in Washington that's refusing to allow it. Other cities are allowing it. Other cities are in moratorium. What's going to be, what kind of ordinance do you expect to bring forward?
Well, I think that some of the things that I talked about were more locational criteria. One, the town center, I wouldn't want to see in the core or in the East Village. We can have a discussion about whether or not we want it in community commercial or just highway commercial, which would, if we looked at that, you'd be looking at just the west end of town. But also, do we want to be specific in that, that we actually put a line item within in our use table of, marijuana production, marijuana processing, or just leave it with the use table that we have now, which allows for production and processing, whether or not we need to go that far. Require indoor grows, if we're going to look at in the industrial area as well. Things along those lines that really just, that don't restrict it completely within the municipality, but I think protect the greater interest.
Dave?
No?
Yeah.
I always try to defer to my colleagues when they're pressing on with more questions on a subject. I had the opportunity to serve on the Little Hoover Commission in California as a project manager doing studies for the governor and the legislature on the effectiveness and the efficiency of California state government. And I didn't find a lot. But my first study was to look at drug and alcohol treatment in California and how effective it was. And it shared the effectiveness of nationwide programs at about 30%. Beyond 30%, they relapse. And that's not a good thing. And the only solution is to put them back through rehab again. And one of the things that came out of that study for me was the connection between marijuana and other drugs. It's a gateway drug. And there are people who will contest that, but the data suggests that it's a gateway drug. I also had the opportunity to spend 3 years of my life living in Asia in 2 different countries, and 6 years living in Europe in 2 different countries. And I've seen what in Asia lack of enforcement against hallucinogenic drugs does, and in Europe what was at the time I was there kind of a laissez-faire attitude. Now it's come and get. And I've seen the effects of that on society in Europe, and they're not good. So I will vote for this moratorium anytime you bring it up. I'd love to see it back anytime, and I hope my colleagues will do likewise.
Any other council comments or questions? Paul?
I think to be an early adopter, or to say not now, not ever, you're pasting a target on your back that says, please sue me. And that's very expensive, and I would rather that the city not become a target that way. That said, I think probably the most disturbing thing for me about I-502 is that when we did away with prohibition in 1933, the state allocated significant funds to the local municipalities for enforcement. I-502 allocates absolutely nothing for that. All of the tax money goes to the state, but all of the enforcement problem is local. Certainly those of us who work with the Association of Washington Cities Legislative Council hope, and I can only call it a hope, that the legislature will rectify this in the upcoming session. That said, there's still there is the problem here. I mean, we all took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, as well as of Washington and the ordinances of the city of Washougal. And, you know, it's a conflict here. It's not at all clear to me how you can support legalization or selling of marijuana in the city and be consistent with your oath to the federal government. On the other hand, to fail to do so is inconsistent with your oath to support Washington laws, Constitution and laws. So you're in a bind, but in any case, I think that a 6-month moratorium is a great idea.
Joyce, did you have a comment?
No, he had it.
Any other items from council? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner. Rose, I'm going to ask for a roll call so that we make sure that we've got 5 in order to pass this.
Councilmember Boger,
Yes.
Councilmember Plinsky,
Yes.
Councilmember Greenlee,
Aye.
Councilmember Lindsay,
Yes.
Councilmember McDaniel,
Aye.
Councilmember Shoemaker,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Motion carries. Thank you, Mitch. That brings us to Agenda Bill 72-13, a resolution regarding amendments to the Personnel Policies, Chapters 2 and 9. Good evening, Jeanette.
Mayor, Council. So this is a three-part agenda bill. The first part talking about medical plan changes for the non-represented employees, and it's a 3-tier approach that we're proposing. For the first year, 2014, we're proposing to continue to offer the non-represented employees the zero-deductible medical plan, becoming the baseline plan, and with the cost sharing being 5% for employees, 95% for the city. But during 2014, we would like to introduce a high deductible medical plan, and with a 3% cost sharing for employees, 97% with the city. And then for that first year, as an incentive for employee participation, that we're proposing a between the high deductible medical plan and the $250 deductible medical plan, that take 75% of that cost savings and then put those funds into a health savings account for those high deductible medical plan participants. And the proposal is also to front load those funds for that first year. The second year, in 2015, the baseline plan would become the $250 deductible medical plan for Regents, and also Kaiser has a similar plan. And the cost sharing would be 5% for employees and then 10% for dependents. In the second year for the high deductible medical plan, the proposal is that we would take that 55% of the savings between the 250 and the high deductible medical plan, and again, put that into a health savings account for those high deductible medical plan participants. That would also be front-loaded in January in the second year of their participation. The third year, going to 2016, those participating on the $250 deductible medical plan would pay 5% for employee and then 15% for their dependents. And similar to 2015, for those participating on the high deductible medical plan, there would be that same 55% cost savings between the 250 deductible plan and the high deductible, but it would not be front-loaded at 100% in January, but rather on a quarterly basis in January, April, July, and October. And then also under medical or health coverage, if you will, we are proposing cost sharing on the dental plan, which we have not had, at 5% for the employees, and that would be consistent through the 3 years of this proposal. So that's the first segment, if you will, of the agenda bill. The second item is a proposed 1% COLA in 2014, and again, a 1% in 2015. And then the last item on the agenda bill is the bereavement policy. We had updated the contractual language with our AFSCME contract a couple of years ago, and quite frankly, I thought I brought forward to council similar language at that time, but reviewing it recently, realized I did not. So we are proposing some modifications to that language for clarity, for the most part, and consistency with the AFSCME contract. I just want to jump back on the medical side. As we all know, the medical costs continue to increase year over year. We're blessed with Regents through AWC next year that we aren't seeing a cost increase, but this will certainly help curtail the costs in migrating employees to the high deductible medical plan, where we will realize, even with the contributions to the health savings account, a good savings amount. And then, of course, we all know with the Affordable Care Act, there's a variety of things still coming into play, and so we want to get ahead of that curve, if you will, and start scaling back those plans that we're offering. A lot going on. Questions?
Council?
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we read the resolution by title only.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
A resolution amending sections 2A.05, Exhibit A of 2A and 9.02 of the city's personnel policy manual, adjusting medical and dental benefits, the salary schedule, and bereavement leave for non-represented employees.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we pass and post the resolution in the usual manner.
Second. Got a motion and a second to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. Council discussion. Dave?
You mentioned you're going to front load the MSAs the first year.
HSAs, yes, correct.
Where's the money coming from?
Yeah, it's part of the operational budget.
Yeah, I know, but where in the budget? Are you pulling that out of the reserves?
No.
No.
That's all I need to know. Thank you. It's not that I don't trust you. I had one other question, if I might, or actually just a comment. You're asking for a 1% increase for our employees on the COLA?
Only for non-represented.
Yes.
Only for the management team.
And I think it's well-deserved. It's probably less than they deserve. But I would point out that you're bringing this for approval to a body that the Salary Commission has just reduced their pay by 5%. Nevertheless, I'm in support of what you're proposing.
In fact, if I might, my pay from the city is reduced 20% from when I started.
Any other council discussion? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to Agenda Bill 73-13, the 2014 Budget Ordinance. Good evening, Jennifer.
Good evening. All right, we're playing musical chairs. At the November 12th meeting, we had the official public hearing for the budget. And due to some absences on the council, we deferred the budget till tonight. So I don't have a new presentation. The budget ordinance is the same as it was from the 12th. And I believe we were going to open it up for more discussion this evening, and then pending, or after the public hearing, we would recommend that we read the ordinance by title only and pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Thank you. With that, I will open the public hearing. We've held one public hearing already at our 2 meetings ago, and I would open the public hearing for a second time for any members of the public that would like to comment on the 2014 budget itself. And for those of you that would like, please come forward to the microphone and give us your name and address, please. Good evening, Jenny.
Good evening. I'm Jenny Brown, 1316 51st Street in Washougal, and I'm with East County Little League. I apologize, I'm got thrown in this at the last minute, and I've never appeared before any of you before, so I don't know how this goes, so if I'm making a boo-boo, just let me know. We are, oh gosh, Little League. I know a lot of faces, a lot of people in this room have kids or grandkids in Little League, and so hopefully you've all been out to Schmidt Field at some time or another. We've been playing on that field for about 5 years now. And we really feel that it's time to start making some improvements to that particular facility. And what we would like to do, and what we have been fundraising and selling chocolate bars and popcorn and everything else that you can imagine, what we've been doing all that for is so that we can get a project started that will build a permanent concession stand and restroom and storage facility that would be available for, obviously for Little League to use or whomever else is using that field. At this point in time, I think Little League is about the only group that uses that field on a regular basis. So one of the reasons we really think that's important is we've grown a lot in the last 5 years. We've gone from about 250 players a year to over 400. We've added fall ball. We had 30 teams last year. Baseball is it just keeps getting more and more popular all the time in Washougal. It's the perfect community event because you don't just go out and stay for a little while and leave. It's something that you can spend your entire day doing, and we feel that Schmidt Field is unfinished at this point. We have enjoyed playing there, but we just need more there. It would be nice to be able to, during the 20-some-odd games that we hold there during the season per week, it would be nice to have, a concession stand that we're not running off of a generator. That wasn't it was an old coffee cart when we got it. We would like to be able to have a storage facility rather than basically me hopping in my truck and, going to our storage facility when we need more field material, when we need more baseballs, when they've hit them all over the fence and they're all out in the street. I mean, it's a great time to do it. We worked with the city, and we're working on going through that process of figuring out what we can do within the confines of the earlier grant that was used to build that field in the first place. And I'm not looking for a particular amount of money. I'm just asking for something because it's just something that would be so helpful, I think, in terms of the city and the community and what we can, what kind of an experience we can provide for everyone. So I noticed that you're going to spend upwards of $30,000 on pickleball, which I had never actually heard of until the newspaper came out. So I'm thinking if you can, if pickleball is something that you're willing to spend money on, I don't know why you wouldn't also be willing to spend money on Little League. So, thank you. Yes.
Did you say that?
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
We're going to hold off on questions while we're in the public hearing. Jenny, thank you. Don't leave, though, because we're going to come back to you. Other members of the public that would like to speak to the issue of the budget? Yeah. Good evening.
Thank you, Council. My name is Dan Duringer, and I've been a resident of Washougal for 17 years. And I'd like to speak on the $7,500 allocation to the East County Family Resource Center. I've known about the center, just seeing it on the roadway here, just across the street here for many years, but I never knew much about it. And I was fortunate to have the invitation to go with Councilor Connie Jo Freeman to go down and visit the center here a week or so ago. And we had an interview with the director and several of the people that run the different organizations there. I was very impressed to find out everything that does happen in the center. I didn't understand that it was actually an assembly of several different nonprofits that are working out of that building. And I think that from my interaction with the people there, that there are people that are very interested in helping this community, and they are a positive influence on this community. And I know that the city supports their work there more than just the $7,500. They provide the building, they provide the utilities, they provide the janitorial services. I don't know if there's anything else that they provide. So I would like to see the city continue to support what's going on at the center there. I know with budget issues, Councilor Shoemaker is concerned about those issues. I know that those are real issues, and that money could be maybe used better someplace else. I don't know. I'm not going to say. But just the whole concept of supporting the center, I'm for. But there is one concern. Do I have a time limit?
3 minutes, and you've still got a minute to go.
There's one concern that I do have, and that is that the services that they do provide are really helping Washougal. And we don't want to provide services that are making people dependent on those services. And I think that's a reasonable position to take, and I hope that they safeguard that. On the abortion services, I don't think those help Washougal. And I would like to see them referred to our local community pregnancy center more. And I'd like to see that to be somehow verified. I don't want to see them referring down to Vancouver for services that don't help them. And thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Anyone else that would like to comment to council? Last call. Anyone that would like to comment in regards to the budget?
I assume this is on the budget. My name is Ken Bork, and I'm a resident. My address is 2319 37th Street in Washougal. And I would like to put in a pitch for the Children's Home Society across the street. I read in the newspaper that there was some consideration for no longer giving a donation to that organization because they could give information to people about where to get abortion services. I don't think that's a valid reason to make a decision to not give them the donation. I think the council should be looking at whether there are needs in our community for people, and whether those needs are being met by the program. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ken. Anyone else that would like to comment on the budget? Final call? Okay, I will close the public hearing and turn the matter back to council.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we read the ordinance by title only.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
An ordinance adopting the annual budget for the city of Washougal, Washington for the 2014 fiscal year.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we pass, post, and publish in the usual manner.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner. Council discussion. Dave?
Is this the time to introduce amendments?
This would be it.
Okay, finally, good. Thank you. And Paul, you wanted to workshop this on the training funds for the council. But in looking back, I find that I raised that issue not only in the council open session, but also in workshops, so it would seem to meet that requirement. However, if you still want to workshop it, I would defer to you to do that on the 9th and delay this budget consideration until then.
I personally would like to do that because the whole training environment at AWC has changed quite a bit. So, for example, what used to be the newly elected officials training is now a much broader elected officials training, and it's offered basically as a webinar. It's not really a webinar. To take the course, you actually would have to go to downtown Vancouver. It will be offered simultaneously in roughly a dozen places across the state. So there would be no hotel expenses and no mileage expenses to take that course. And there are a number of other trainings that will be available online rather than putting body in chair. So I would like to talk about this a little bit. We may discover that we can actually cut more than I had thought.
Based on that, I would move to delay the consideration of the budget until after the workshop on the 9th.
Second. If I might, just as a point of order, if there are other issues that people want to bring up so that we can workshop them on
At the
them,
moment, you've got a motion to table, which
I will withdraw my second.
I'll second.
So I've got, to make sure, I've got a motion and a second to table the discussion of the budget adoption to December 9. So we're going to table a
After the workshop on the 9th.
So we're going to table a $34 million budget for a $7,000 discussion on council training.
There are other issues to be raised at the workshop.
That you don't want to raise this evening. I'm just making sure that we're all on the same page.
Well, what if there's other things we need to talk about that could be?
This is the opportunity to do that. That's why we've
If-
stretched this budget conversation out for the last few months.
If we vote to table, then we're done for the night.
Yep.
So if there's anything else that we want to discuss, we need to vote no on the motion to table.
To discuss this evening. Right.
So can we
So-
do things by topic and postpone just the one? Or can we
Typically, we would
discuss a
take-
few? I'm sorry.
Typically, we would take all of your discussion points, point by point, topic by topic. So
Can we discuss them tonight and act next week?
All depends on what you do in this motion. Are there any questions in regards to the motion? The motion is to table the discussion. The motion and the second are to table the discussion until next week. Any questions on the motion? Okay, I've got a
Yes,
motion.
I have a question. Can we address the questions that the folks have come?
I could certainly come back and do that after we take the vote. Yes.
Okay.
Dave?
If the motion fails and we stay in session, can we get a break?
Absolutely. Okay, any other questions on the motion? I've got a motion and a second to table discussion on the, and potentially adoption of the budget to December 9. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
I heard 5-2. Motion carries, and the item is tabled. In regard to, Jenny, in a roundabout way on yours, Mitch, I know we've had discussions in the past in regard to the Schmid Fields and the further improvements out there. They've mainly been around the third field, building the last field, all that kind of stuff, and the millions of dollars we've got to put into streets, everything else that we've kind of put off every time that we've done something out there. Do the items that Jenny mentioned tonight, restrooms, concessions, storage sheds, those type of things, do those trigger, in your mind, all of those road improvements, all of that type of stuff?
No, and I've said that.
Okay, so those are just for the additional use of the properties?
There's other issues out there between the school district
Right.
and whatnot, and cost for utilities for sewer to that location as well. But from what we discussed originally as a plan right now, no, I mean, they would be fine.
Okay.
Can I ask her that question now?
Sure.
Did you say we were having 20 games a week?
On Schmidt Field, there's 2 fields there.
20 games per week, every season? Wow, that's a lot.
I mean, assuming we don't get a rain out, which, you know.
Right. That's a lot of games.
That's not the only field that we use. We use Hamlet Field, we use Biggs, which is at Lower Hathaway, we share Good Field. Those are all where we hold actual games. We do practices on both Hamilton Fields and up in Alphay, up at King Horn Sky. We're all, 30 teams takes up a lot of space, a lot of space.
I bet, yeah. Thank you.
Jennifer?
Yes, I have a quick question regarding the Schmidt Fields also. So these are permanent fields, correct? Okay. So do we have, they've been fundraising, this is, there's obviously a cost involved. Do we know what it is or how close they are? Or?
We are getting close to what a cost would be. We had one plan that we were working on, and now we're incorporating some suggestions that we received from the city. I don't have an actual number for you tonight, but it's doable. I mean, we have, the Little League has close to $20,000 that we have set aside for this, and we're continuing to fundraise all the time. We have another one on Saturday. So, we're serious about this.
Yes, obviously. Thank you.
Paul?
Just, again, in a previous life, currently, I serve on the Board of Trustees of a private foundation in Chemung County, New York. And about 17 years ago, the city donated some land that had been wiped out by a flood to create Little League ball fields. And our foundation and the community foundation donated about $17,000 for exactly what you're talking about, which was a concession stand. And that concession stand, some of the material was donated, most of the labor was donated, but those concessions ended up paying essentially all of the costs for the Little League specific maintenance of that facility. Now, admittedly, they had 4 fields instead of 2, but we'll see what we can do, but I would also encourage you to approach such organizations as the Community Foundation of Clark County and even the Fred Meyer Trust or the Murdoch Trust. If you'd like to talk to me afterwards, I may have some other ideas.
Okay, with that, it brings us to the second opportunity in the agenda for any members of the public that would like to address council. Yes, Mrs. Terrell.
Good evening, councilors. I'm Marilyn Tyrrell, and I live at 950 G Street. I'm speaking about the community health services, but I thought it was part of the budget, or never mind, anyway. At the last meeting of the council discussing the budget, there was an objection to the funding of the children's home services, an unnotable $7,500 in a several $million budget. The reasons for this objection disturbed me, so I made some effort to check out just what CHS does, what services they offer. As home for several programs, they provide advice services for over 300 families, moms and children. Except for a few in-house programs, they are an advice agency. They direct residents to the county agencies who can actually assist them with their particular needs. This is a point that I would like to be known, that these services are not necessarily available in Washougal or Camas, and to get the services, it is necessary that these people go to Vancouver. The councillor's objections seem to be based on pregnancy and, as an adjunct to that, abortion services. The CHS staff told me that one of the questions they were often asked, and I think this is important, was just how to find the phone number for the Camas service. They suggested that the pregnancy service might make a greater or better effort to make their phone number more available. As I was talking to the receptionist, a woman in the waiting room interrupted to tell me that she, a single mother, had been coming for service for several months and how grateful she was for what they had done for her. I don't know what I would have done if they had not helped me, she said. This council's main purpose, as I see it, which is you, is to provide a good city home for those of us who have chosen to live here. The clients of CHS probably are more in need of your care than many others of us. I ask that you decline to include a vote against this agency as part of your budget. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marilyn. Anyone else that would like to comment to council? Good evening, Rod.
My name is Rod Morris, 4050 Addy Street. I really hope you guys do support the Children's Home Society. That is a wonderful place. They do an awful lot of work for everybody in this town that goes there to get their help. We've supported them for many years, and they've always proven to us that they're above board. They do, in fact, they do more things than most of us even realize they do there. So please put that back in the budget.
Thank you, Rod. Anyone else that would like to address council? Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Carrie Crosley, and I'm the executive director of the Community Pregnancy Center. And, you know, whether you voted in or voted not, you know, our services are not, we are a nonprofit. Our services are free. We don't charge anyone. We have a nurse on duty 4 hours a day, Monday through Friday. We give free pregnancy tests, but we also serve the community with clothing and food and other services. And our number is right on our billboard as you're driving through town. So, you know, if all I'm asking is that you refer and allow us to continue to provide the community. I know we got a lot of bad propaganda in the news, and none of it being true, and probably was said by many that have never even entered our doors. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public that would like to address council? Okay. Seeing none, going into Mayor's report, I've got a number of items for you this evening. Number one, I do want to dispel the rumor that Dave and I are becoming brothers in beards. Got, well, we got it easily proved, but you have to be here tomorrow. I did get a couple of questions today we had a previous workshop jointly with the city of Camas, and the question of beards came up. Dave's is actually in support of No Shave November for prostate awareness and all of that kind of stuff. Mine is just because hunting season came around and I went ahead and put it back on. So Dave has lost the wager on who had more gray hair, so I believe his is coming off tonight. Yeah, so there you go. Mrs. Forsberg, we had a meeting this morning with the state auditor's office.
We did, and
up to
I
speed?
am happy to report we have another year of a clean audit. This makes 3 years in a row. We had no management letters, no findings. So it's a testament to the wonderful finance staff and community development staff and police department staff, fire staff, public works. Everybody had a little bit of the audit this year, and we did a great job. They gave us very positive comments on our internal controls and all the positive steps that we're making here at the city. Another very positive move is we get to go back to our biannual audit. So we get to skip a year. It'll be kind of nice to have a year off without an audit. But should we need a federal audit, then they would come in. But we are not near the $500,000 threshold for a federal audit for this year. So very exciting news this morning, and the report should be issued in about 2 weeks.
Excellent, thank you. Councilman Shoemaker, in regards to pickleball, one of the recommendations that Dave and Jennifer brought forward earlier today, we have a $20,000 figure in the currently in the 2014 budget for our audits for 2014, which obviously we're now not going to expend. So the recommendation was, and where we'll park it for the moment, for that portion of it, is into the Parks Department, potentially for your action to put that towards pickleball if it should be needed.
Oh, way to go.
We're trying to find a way to fund that thing. Rod, can I ask you real quick, or Chief Schumacher, we had a successful turkey carnival. Do I understand that we gave away more turkeys than we've ever given before?
I haven't heard any official numbers yet after they put all the money in the bank, but we did order 400 turkeys this year, and when we hit 300, we thought we'd just surpassed a number we'd never ever would have achieved in thinking about it in the future. So now this year we've gone 423. And so the 50 that we had ordered, actually got 50 extras on Saturday. So the extras that were left over were donated to Mr. Schmid and the Knights of Columbus for feeding people on Thanksgiving. So
Excellent.
It turned out really well, and we had a great crowd, and everybody had a great time. So thank you for letting us use the fire hall for that.
Thank you to the volunteers and the fire department for putting that on again. We do have some upcoming events in the next week or so. This Thursday, there is a block party in downtown that the merchants are putting on from 4 to 7. So any folks that are out and about that evening or that don't have other plans, come on down and be out and about. This Saturday is Walk and Knock, the annual Walk and Knock, to raise food for our local food banks. There are a number of different community service organizations that are involved in that. I would say if you've got time, anyone that may have time to put towards that, if you can be towards the Tidland parking lot at about 9 o'clock in the morning, there will probably be plenty of people that can put you to work. Trucks, I would say station wagons, but I guess now it's SUVs. Those types of things are in high demand. The stuff that's been coming back the last few years has been unbelievably gratifying to see it come in. So they need a lot of help repacking all that. They need a lot of help going out, picking it up, and moving from there. So that's this Saturday. As Paul mentioned, there is an AWC training for council this Saturday from 9:30 to 3:30 down at Vancouver City Hall. If you are interested in being part of that, it is one of those that's being done among 12 cities by webinar, but we'll have nucleuses of people in each of those cities. touch base with Rose if you would like to be registered for that. I believe it's a whole $25 or $35 to take part in that, so. The Christmas parade is next Friday, the 13th, starting at 6 o'clock in the evening, and then we'll do the tree lighting immediately after that in the plaza. My last item is in regard to C-Tran and RTC. From our workshop earlier in the evening, is there any action that council would like to take this evening formally in regard to representation for C-Tran and RTC for the next year or portion thereof? Dave?
Move that we continue the current representation on C-Tran and RTC.
Second.
Second.
For how long?
2 years.
Could I suggest maybe 1 year, because there may be some things that happen as far as the representation goes. It'll probably be back to us before then anyway.
You caught me in a weak moment because nobody seconded the motion. Yeah, I'll buy that.
Yeah, I think what.
You had 2 seconds.
I think what we were talking about in the workshop, or intending to get to anyway, was at least doing the status quo until the whole C-Tran representation and seats for each of the cities.
Actually, I think that would make more sense to do it that way rather than say 1 year, but it'll come back to us anyway, probably. It doesn't really matter. It could have been 2 years, really, for that matter.
So for the time being, until you take it up again, should we call it status quo?
That's fine with me.
I agree.
Rose, can you word the motion accordingly in the minutes?
To maintain the status quo?
Yeah. Okay, I've got a.
So moved.
I've got a motion and a second. Any
Second.
additional council discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Any items from council members?
In following up to the Camas meeting, I wonder if we want to caucus as a council at some point about where we are with the fire agreement. For example, we talked about former Vancouver Chief Bivens being, consulting on this. I don't think it was brought out that he was Washougal's consultant on this. And there's some things that we need to point out about how we got to where we are, and I just wonder if we just want to caucus ourselves before we have this agreement in front of us. And what I mean by that is a workshop item.
We can set some time aside next week during the workshop for council comments and discussion, and then have it on your agenda for action.
Yep. Any other items, Rick?
Well, as a point of personal privilege, I'd like to introduce Richard Crossman, who taught me how to practice law in California, taught me how to be a lawyer, and I still to this day know the California rules of civil procedure better than the Washington court rules, because I'm not a litigator up here. So,
Welcome.
We'll forgive him for that.
Thank you.
Karen?
Nothing.
Paul?
RTC meeting, 4 o'clock, county building, tomorrow afternoon. It is a strictly constrained meeting. It has to be over at 5:30 because the county commission meets at 6 and they have to break down the room. So 4 to 5:30 at county commission offices. I also, as a point of personal privilege, would like to have a resolution of thanks to the Bethel Community Church and its community for making available the parking lot that makes it possible for the Turkey Carnival to happen. We couldn't do that without their help, and they have to change their schedule to make that happen. So I'd move a resolution of thanks from the city to the Bethel community.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to do a resolution of thanks to the Bethel Community Church. Council discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And then just one other quick thing. I'm curious, are there any other council members who are interested in being in the parade on the 13th?
I wanted to.
I might have a conflict.
It's
Okay.
gonna be you and me, huh?
Yeah, you and me, kid.
I'd give a maybe, most likely.
My final answer is maybe.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to sit there this morning and see such a wonderful, clean audit. Thank you, Jennifer, for all that you do and your staff. It was just really, it was delightful. And Rod, I never win a turkey. I play bingo and it's a marvelous event for Washougal. So.
Jennifer?
Yes, a couple of things. I wanted to bring up the Festival of Trees at Hathaway Elementary School is happening on Friday and Saturday. There's a breakfast with Santa on Saturday morning, and there's a lot written up about it in the newspapers and online, so you can find out a lot more information. Stuff the Bus is also happening this Friday, so please get your canned food items into the schools, and there are local businesses also collecting. So once again, check the local newspaper for all the information on that. The 10th of December, that's a Tuesday night, the Washougal Schools Foundation will be hosting their annual Christmas concert at Washburn Auditorium at 7 p.m. The price for admission is $5. For adults and children are free this year. Yes, and it's a compilation of local talent. It's a family concert, so please do come out and enjoy the Christmas music on Tuesday night, the 10th. Thank you.
Dave?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to thank the people that came out in support of my position on East County Social Services tonight, also known as the Children's Home Society. And I'd like to ask people who are not in favor of my position to take a look at my website at www.dave-shoemaker.com/news and take a look at the second article posted there for the 28th of November, and you will discover that your upset is for nothing because you've been badly misled by the Columbian. I suspect this is not the first time. It's certainly not the first time for me to be in this position. But you will find there my half dozen or so reasons for not supporting the $7,500 cash subsidy. I am not in favor of closing out CHS. I think they do some good work in Washougal. I admire them for that. They do some things that I don't approve of. And I'd be glad to debate anybody on that, so long as we can have a civil debate on it, which is not what I've had the last couple of days with people who have called my house and sent me emails and called me an idiot, an ideologue, and a variety of other not very pleasant names. I will debate anybody, anytime, anywhere on the subject, as long as it's civil. Thank you very much.
Joe?
Well, I want to say that 900 runners and walkers, and I was one of them, attended the Run for the Hungry that Gateway Church puts on. It's their 12th annual. 900. So next year, we want to incrementally increase that attendance. You're all on notice at 7:30. Well, actually, the race starts at 8:30 on Thanksgiving morning. Yes, you're already up, ladies, basting that turkey. It can wait an hour and a half while you run down. We meet at Washougal High School, and we do this little walk, run. Some people actually run it. Some of us drink coffee while walking it through the parks and trails of Washougal. And we're always talking about how do we build tourism. This is amazing. I don't think there's 900 people in Washougal that like to run on Thanksgiving morning in the cold. So this is getting out. The word is getting out to marathoners and 5K runners. It's good for tourism, and it's great that I walked with a few of my Camas Transportation. You know, I drive school bus for Camas. Camas Transportation had a team, and so I walked through the trails and through the streets of Washougal with my Camas co-workers, and they were just in awe of our little town, you know, because you go places that you don't normally drive when you go for a 5K walk through trails. So that was wonderful. So you're all invited. You have just under 365-day notice. So I'm getting out ahead of the game. And it was mentioned that, and we just took a vote, I want to thank you, Washougal counselors, that you are entrusting me to go sit in the hot seat for C-Tran, I'm telling you, it's baptism by fire to become a brand-new council member and then be asked to be put on C-Tran Board of Directors. We've got a lot of decisions yet to go, and I appreciate that Washougal, you came out in votes, I mean in groves of, let me back that up. You came out with the advisory votes, and it is my hope that the county of Washougal will, the county of Clark County will be heard at the C-Tran Board of Directors and at the RTC, which stands for Regional Transportation Council. So I just wanted to thank you, and I trust that I will continue to do a good job until further notice as C-Tran goes through this transition. And next, I too would like to address the issue of the Children's Home Society. You know, it's an interesting process to be given a big, thick 2014 proposed budget. And what does this represent again? How many million?
34?
Connie Jo, I want you to take this $34 million and make a decision on whether or not you think it should or shouldn't be approved. Well, you know, there's a number of things in here that I have no idea about. But as you've seen tonight, and you've seen through the last couple of months, agencies that are being considered to have money funded to them by the city of Washougal, they come here and they make a presentation to us. And then we have the job of discussing it and investigating it. Well, so the last two Monday nights, well, actually Thanksgiving week we didn't meet, so the two weeks before that, the issue of the Children's Home Society came up with a $7,500 funding. It was fairly new to me. You know, again, it's been across the street from us all this time. I've been coming here for 2 years now, but I've only been in that building for what's the name of the group that meets on there? Paul and Jennifer and I.
Washougal
Unite.
Community Coalition.
Yeah, the Washougal Community Coalition. So I'd been in the building. I'd seen lots of little feet run around, lots of mommies running around, but I didn't know an awful lot. My point is, as Dave Shoemaker mentioned, we made the newspaper. Look at that pretty picture. And it was alarming to hear yourself described in the newspaper. People that know me, they know me as a person that has given her entire adult life to serving children and to, as an educator, as a youth leader, as a mom, as a homeschooler, as a school teacher, as a school administrator, as a school bus driver. What this last few weeks has been for me has been an opportunity of exploration, of asking questions. And in public, right up here in this chair, I asked a question that created a firestorm, which is why this article came out. It was a simple question, and it was this question: why are we sending and referring our young ladies that are pregnant way down to Vancouver when we have this wonderfully staffed, professionally staffed, professional medical individuals that do ultrasounds? All of this stuff that's here in our local community is donated through voluntary dollars. It's not your tax dollars at work. It's not your tax dollars being spent for sending young ladies down the road. There's nothing, I'm not saying anything wrong with CMAR down the road. What I was saying that night was, let's use our own pregnancy clinic, because their pregnancy tests are free. It doesn't cost taxpayers anything. Their ultrasounds are free. It doesn't cost taxpayers anything. Statistically, it's proven that when a woman who is pregnant sees her baby on an ultrasound, usually 90% on an average, they will choose to keep that precious baby. Oftentimes they're asking for an ultrasound because they need to confirm some things in their mind. And that is, should I keep this baby? Should I adopt this baby? Or should I abort this baby? Do you know that the Community Pregnancy Clinic actually teaches all three of those? They are all about education. So you would wonder, why would an organization such as the Community Pregnancy Center teach about abortion? It's because they want the girls to be informed. That's what we all want. Everybody in this generation says people need to be educated and informed so they can make a choice. Now at the pregnancy clinic, they inform them about something that's very, very, very important when it comes to abortion. And that is, if you choose abortion, there is one dead and there is one injured. And so I don't apologize for wanting to support that. I believe wholeheartedly that as a city that has a building to provide for Children's Home Society, they do a wonderful work. And I believe that this week of, or 2 weeks of investigation has shown a light on a few areas that could be done in a better fashion. And I believe that Kathy, who's here tonight, thank you, Kathy, she has a heart to serve the community and to serve women and children. Everyone that Dan and I went and met the other day, they're spending their lives for children and for families. And I take my hat off to you for that, and I thank you for it. I think what's going to happen in the next years to come is that the city is going to understand more thoroughly what our $7,500 in our building is doing. I think that the community at large, the faith-based communities, give lots of food, clothing, a lot of services to the Children's Home Society. I think we're going to see the faith-based community even more involved. And I think it's going to be a reciprocal relationship. In fact, you're going to have some stars among your midst. Kathy and I are going to be on OPB radio together tomorrow for an interview because of the firestorm, like I called it. It's not a bad thing to ask questions. You would want me to ask questions. You are asking me to be responsible on how to spend your tax dollars. So I set out asking questions, and I'm thrilled that I have come to the conclusion that I do want to spend the $7,500 towards the Children's Home Society. And again, like I said, I look forward to a wonderful partnership. I'm going to challenge you more so than ever before. I won't get to volunteer a lot because I work and I'm city council and CTRAN and I'm all those things. But I want to be involved and I want to understand it better. So I thank you for, Kathy, for hosting us for a tour. I thank your staff. And I thank you, city council members, for your desire to support it. I asked you questions and you gave me feedback. That's what this process is all about. And I'm thrilled to be partnering with people with such integrity. So that's what I want to say tonight about the $7,500. I'm disappointed that the Columbian writer has left. I hope he watches on YouTube. Thank you.
One thing real quick for council. Appointments Committee is going to meet this Wednesday morning. So anyone who wants to keep or change a committee assignment, it would be best if you emailed one of us, either myself or Dave or the mayor, to that effect.
Rose.
Oh, send it to Rose? To Rose? Okay.
The person's got them all.
So I just want to encourage you that if you have any interest in committee assignments or liaison positions or anything like that, that you let Rose know in advance of our meeting, 11:30 Wednesday morning. Thank you.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
We are adjourned.
Second, third?